Campbell Newman promised a government of humility, grace and dignity. He even made a contract with Queensland to deliver better frontline services, more jobs, lower cost of living, and an open and accountable government. But the LNP soon showed that no program was too small to cut. It also found out something about one of its own. The LNP showed its priorities early, cutting frontline services while indulging itself with a new executive building. And then the mass sackings started, and the broken promises. Then followed more and more frontline service cuts. It even cut a job training scheme. A law change made job cuts easier. That's what you can do with a huge majority. And for good measure, the LNP's first state budget cut and cut and cut more frontline services and 14,000 jobs. Nobody was safe, not even school tuck shops or the elderly. And the LNP itself wasn't safe from its own MPs jumping ship or a second minister quitting. The year ended with little holiday cheer. A new year started with school and TAFE college closures, things never mentioned before the election. Then, another minister was forced to quit. Taxpayers funded a new blueprint to Americanise our hospital system. But that didn't stop it being used to raise funds for the LNP. And the LNP saw nothing wrong having ministers wine and dine big donors behind closed doors. Soon, the Treasurer was striking deals to sell state assets, including 7 office blocks he sold at a massive loss. He justified it by pointing to the independent Costello audit. So independent, it was led by a Liberal Party Life member who, as Federal Treasurer, sold off billions in public assets. Then, the LNP's boot camp plans themselves went off the rails. And all the while, Queenslanders struggled as household bills went up and up, despite LNP promises of cutting the cost of living. Worst was the record rises in power bills. Whatever happened to the plans the LNP said it had to cut $120 a year off electricity bills? The only cuts around were more frontline services. And the LNP was again embarrassed by one of its own. 6 schools were closed so the LNP could get its hands on their real estate, and there are still 47 under threat on the government's secret hit list. Finally, the LNP took seriously the need to tackle criminal gangs, even though it stood up for their civil liberties when in opposition. The only problem was they left it to their bungling and know-it-all Attorney General. And true to form, the LNP continued interfering in the state's corruption-fighting agency and even sacked its all-party Parliamentary Oversight Committee. And then we found out from the Auditor General the true cost of the LNP's new executive building project, $2.6 billion. And remember, taxpayers will never own it. Funding cuts meant it wasn't a happy new year for some older Queenslanders, but the LNP can always find money to hire spin doctors to disguise what it's really up to. Finally, after former LNP MP Scott Driscoll quit, the people of Redcliffe chose Labor to give them their voice in state parliament. After losing Redcliffe, the Premier said he'd listen more, but he hasn't. Just ask our hospital doctors. And as the government marked its 2nd anniversary, the attacks on our judges and lawyers continued, taking us back to the dark days before the Fitzgerald inquiry. Just 1 year to go. Then you can send them a message.